Glad to see you all here on this kind of chilly day, and but it's okay. I kind of like this chilly weather. This is good old Michigan weather, and feels comfortable and refreshing. And I can go out and do a walk without sweating like crazy, so it's really kind of nice. Yes, I've gotten myself into this challenge that I'm going to walk 240 miles this month. Oh goodness, I don't know how I got myself into that challenge, but it's like I have to get myself into these challenges before I actually get off my butt and get out and walk. So, you know, so we have to challenge ourselves some way, shape, or form. So welcome to Greater Cincinnati Dems, and let's open it up for announcements. Do we have any announcements today? Okay, here, Dot.
The Charter Committee of Greater Cincinnati is having their annual meeting tomorrow night, 5:30, at Dinsmore & Shoal, which is the 19th floor of the building at the corner of 5th and Sycamore. There will be refreshments in a bar. And the main speaker is George Vincent, who's a big transportation guy, kind of representing the corporate community on their vision about transportation. And Cam Hardy from the Bus Coalition is going to be there, and we hope to have someone from the county as well to talk about transportation. They would like a donation, but you don't have to do that. We'd just like to have you come and have a good crowd. It's a beautiful view of the river and a nice room up there on the 19th floor. So it's 5:30 on the 12th.
Alberta?
I have a couple of announcements. I have a summer solstice soiree. He is on June 23rd. I'm going to give this paper to Peter. On June 23rd, there's a pool party from June 23rd, Sunday the 20th, from 1 o'clock in the afternoon until 10 p.m. or until people leave. That sounds like an interesting party. That's by Bernadine Denny, who's here often and often doing questions and stuff. The yard is a party area, including a driveway, parking, Little John or Robin across the road, carpooling and drop-offs. Anyway, on June 23rd, I'll put this announcement to Peter. I will be gone. I finally found the date that I'm going to be gone. Yay! My children have already left for Peru, and they're going straight from Peru to a park. A program in Lake Placid, New York. The children will be in this camp for 7 weeks. But my daughter will be counselor there for the first 2 weeks. And I guess that was tricky of her getting 5 weeks off her new job. And I'll tell you again, I'll have to look up what my daughter's job is, but we'll have to, it's a very important job, and she's being paid a whole lot of money for it.
Restorative justice.
Yeah, well, restorative justice, whatever it is. And she's my daughter, and I'm very proud of her. Anyway, I'm going to be picking the kids up on August 20th. I'll be picking them up in Lake Placid, New York, and flying them to San Diego. So I get to be with my kids for just one Tuesday. So, huh? I wish. No, but I have to fly to Albany and then pick the 2 kids up in Albany, and you know, they're little kids. They'll be 11 and 8 then, so they have to have somebody in authority. That's me. Okay. Okay, there we go.
Susan, behind you, first.
Okay. I have a couple of things. One, I'm going to pass around for the people who wanted the PowerPoint slides from last week. If you'll print your email, and even if you weren't here and you want a copy, we cannot do it through the MailChimp. So, right, so we can do other kinds of things on that, but not PowerPoint. So just be sure to make it legible so I can see it. The other thing is the Pride Parade, June 22nd. There's a number of groups Charmin McGuffey's gonna have an event, and also the moms, the Demand Action are also gonna be doing it. If you want more information, I'll give it to Peter to put in. The thing coming up this week at Ellen Beerhorst House is a meet and greet with Charmaine McGuffey. Do you all know who Charmaine is? She's running for sheriff against Jim. Right, so, beg your pardon? In the primary in the fall. So it's from.
Spring. Primary in the spring.
Yeah.
Spring primary.
One of those seasons.
Okay.
Bring forward.
It's June 15th, 3 to 6 p.m. in Park on Lafayette. It's at Ellen's in the Lloyd House. I mean, if anybody knows where to look at.
Wait, what's the date again?
This Saturday, June 15th. The other is just to, I don't know if you've all gotten the invitations, but there's a number of debate parties that are coming up. And if you haven't, raise your hand so I can see. I'll get that information to Peter so we can, AFTAB is having one. There's one, Ward 15 is having one. So I'll get that.
Susan, can I just add on something on Susan? Just on that list that's going around, if anybody is interested in the 7-page summary of We the Corporations, I'd be happy to send it to you. Susan, where and when is the primary start? 7. Where is
All right, I guess I'm next. Two things I want to tell you about. One of them is a reminder. These are two different groups I'm a part of. One of them is called Vegan Earth, and we do a monthly potluck and program, and we've moved this month's program back a month to Sunday, June 23rd at Clifton United Methodist Church. And that's going to be Michelle Dillingham's talk, Excuse Me, Could You Spare a Little Social Change? Michelle is this year's Ohio Social Worker of the Year. And she's going to discuss food policy, environmental justice, local politics, and more, or combinations thereof, like food justice, environmental politics, and also running again, and this time probably successfully, for Cincinnati City Council. And that will be in 2001. And then two days later, 2021. And in the seasonal elections, whatever season that is. And then 2 days later, on Tuesday, June 25th, at First Unitarian Church on Linton Street, 7 till 9 p.m. And by the way, Michelle's presentation is going to be at 3 p.m. And the potluck starts at 2 p.m. And we ask people to bring a vegan dish for at least 10 people or more, and if you can't, make a donation. And if you're just coming for the program, make a donation, but nothing's required.
What's the date again?
That's June 23rd again, Clifton United Methodist Church. That's on Clifton Avenue, kind of right behind the parking lot for Dewey's Pizza. Senator Place, thank you. That's exactly right. 1 block north, on your way to the Lloyd House, in a way, if you like. And then 2 days later, at the First Unitarian Church, another group I belong to, I serve on the board of, the Free Inquiry Group, is going to have Nathan Michael. And Nathan Michael is an administrative director in a large religious healthcare system. He's going to speak on the topic of religion and healthcare. He's going to explain why religion is so prevalent in healthcare and go over some of the religious rules that restrict certain types of care and how religious ideology often prevents healthcare providers from giving certain types of care. So again, that's Tuesday, June 25th, 7 to 9 p.m., First Unitarian Church. That's on Linton Street, which is between Reading Road and
South of Lincoln.
it's across from what used to be the big Sears store, if you
Now
remember,
the Innovation Hub.
which is the UC Innovation Hub now. Okay, thanks very much.
Any more announcements?
Is Alberta, tonight is Alberta's picnic.
Tonight is Alberta's band concert in Blue Ash, okay? What time is it?
Bring your picnic supper anytime after between.
Bring your picnic supper between 5 and 7, and the concert starts at 7. If you bring a folding chair, you can set it out, and the concert is from 7 to 9. But if you can't stay that late, at least come for a little while, and then you can always just sit at the shelter that I have reserved for you. Shelter 3, behind the rec center in Blue Ash. Do you know where the police station and all of that stuff is? You have to go to the back of that and then just keep going back. And they have a very lovely amphitheater there. There'll be 400 or 500 people there tonight. So this is a major concert. Sycamore Band is a major concert band. Yay.
You have them every week there, every week also.
Not from us.
On Sunday, I went to the Moms to Van Action Rally. I saw several other folks here that were there. Susan was there, registering voters. There were other folks that were there. In the middle of all that, there was a man walking beside another man. He had a sign on him that guns save lives. And this guy, who scared the living daylights out of me, was carrying an assault rifle over his chest. It was incredibly scary to be around somebody like that. There were children there, and this guy strutted around with his assault rifle. And they could do nothing. The police could do nothing because by Ohio law, it's his right. And so that's why it's really important that we listen to people like Ethan Nichols, who is not only standing up against gun violence, but he's moving it a step further. Students about legislation that can help us get rid of this gun violence, and people that, he could have been a crazy for all I knew. He could have opened up with that assault rifle and gunned down everybody on Fountain Square. It could have happened in an instant, because when you have that amount of ammunition in a very short amount of time, it could have been over. So that's why the work that Ethan is doing is extremely important. So, Ethan, I'm turning it over to you. Here you go.
Okay, so it looks like this is on. My name is Ethan Nichols. I'm the president and founder of Ohio Students for Gun Legislation, an Ohio-based political advocacy organization run by high school and college students. And our entire mission is passing common sense gun legislation, common sense gun reform. Our main focus is currently at the state level, but we've also lobbied our representatives on H.R. 8 and similar bills in the Ohio House after we won back the House last year. So for those of you who don't know, H.R. 8 is the universal background checks bill that the House of Representatives passed over 100 days ago, and that Mitch McConnell has refused to hold a vote on in the Senate. So we partnered with March for Our Lives to do a letter writing campaign to our representatives. We collected over 150 letters from Ohio constituents and mailed them to Senators Brown and Portman. And they were hand-delivered by March for Our Lives members in DC, partnering with the Brady campaign and Team Enough. And they spent a day on Capitol Hill visiting congressional offices and scheduling meetings and delivering batches of letters to various senators and representatives. We also collected letters to Representatives Shabbat and Winstrup here, and then some other representatives up in Cleveland that we have a chapter there. So again, as I'm sure you all know, most of our federal representatives and senators in Ohio are not the most open to discussing gun reform with us. They usually send us a nice little form letter or email saying, hi, we love hearing your views, and they ignore us for a while. I've been blacklisted by Rob Portman right now, but I sent quite a few letters to Rob. So Ohio Students for Gun Legislation is the Ohio chapter of Students for Gun Legislation National, which was founded actually before March for Our Lives, just after the Parkland shooting in Michigan by a group of high schoolers. And they launched an online petition to their federal representatives that reached 300,000 signatures on change.org. They since then received a letter from Barack Obama and various other high-level former officials and current officials, congratulating them on their work and whatnot. So I'm just going to go over some of the statistics around gun violence first before I get into our work, what we do, and stuff like that. So in case you don't know, Americans are 25 times more likely to be murdered with a gun than people in any other high-developed nation on Earth. So we're excluding some very small, low-income countries that do face higher rates of gun violence than us. But among all of the high-income developed nations, we lead when it comes to gun violence. Gun homicides shows per 100,000 residents. As you can see, we are vastly above any other country, any other high-income nation. Canada follows us, but again, it's not a very close second. Pretty big difference there. So roughly 100 Americans are shot and killed every day as a result of gun violence. Whoever you check with, sometimes that number will range from 100 to 107, depending on who you ask. But studies by Everytown for Gun Safety, the Brady Campaign, and Giffords Legal Center, they privately fund gun violence research because the CDC is legally not allowed to study gun violence because the congressional bill passed quite a while ago that prevents any federal money being used to study gun violence. It's curious that they don't want us studying and looking at the facts around gun violence. If they obviously claim that they're right on this issue, that we don't need gun reform, then why aren't they studying it? Why aren't they letting us see the facts? So again, just an introduction to Ohio Students for Gun Legislation. So we partner with a large variety of organizations. This past Saturday, we were down at Fountain Square with Moms Demand Action for the Wear Orange event. I spoke at the event. So we do a lot of work with Moms Demand Action. We hosted various vigils and rallies with them. We work a lot with the Young Activists Coalition, various indivisible chapters, the Ohio Coalition Against Gun Violence, March for Our Lives, and various other organizations. I do want to point out Ohioans for Gun Safety very briefly here. It's a relatively new organization, but they are a nonprofit and they are collecting signatures to get a ballot initiative in Ohio regarding background checks. So their goal is to have a background checks bill on the Ohio ballot by 2020 or at the latest 2021. They just submitted language to the Attorney General on Monday with initial language for a bill. They're expecting to get the bill rejected by the Attorney General this week. They don't expect it to be easily accepted, but they have reached over 1,000 signatures to get it initially approved. So that's a great group to follow if you're interested in supporting them. They need a lot of help collecting signatures when it comes time for them to get that approved on the ballot. So some of our short-term goals and events and activities that we host Town Hall for Our Lives, a project started by March for Our Lives. So we host town halls and are organizing town halls across Ohio. We currently have active chapters in Cincinnati, Toledo, Wilmington, Youngstown, and Cleveland. With active members there, we have roughly 35 to 40 members in Ohio, and chapters in Michigan, Ohio, Nebraska, and Minnesota. So we hold town halls with various political candidates, some of our endorsed candidates like Marlena Warfield, one of our endorsed school board candidates. We're planning one with Charmaine McGuffey at some point. We rallies, just obviously the Wear Orange event on Saturday. Last week we rallied with the Young Activists Coalition at City Hall to demand gun reform. We pressure businesses to no longer offer discounts to NRA members. There's a surprisingly large list of Ohio businesses and companies that still offer discounts to NRA members. a very large list, actually. So we're working on getting those businesses to drop any discounts or special offers that we give to NRA members. And I'm sure, as most of you know, Marching for Our Lives was very successful with that last year. Dick's Sporting Goods no longer allows guns to be carried on their premises. They no longer sell certain assault weapons in their stores. Various other companies as well. We're expanding and growing our website. So probably one of our biggest things, especially last year and now, is electing gun sense candidates. So Moms Demand Action releases a list of endorsed, not necessarily endorsed, but gun sense distinction awards to candidates every year. And those candidates are candidates they have researched and deemed to be gun sense. They're champions of common sense gun reform and solutions for ending gun violence. AFTAB Purevol was endorsed by Everytown for Gun Safety. We did a lot of work to help elect him. We endorsed him last year. Unfortunately, as I'm sure all of you know, he did not win, unfortunately, but we're very excited to see what AFTAB has in the future. We do fundraising. Obviously, a lot of what we do requires funds, and not being a legal nonprofit, yet we still need a lot of help with that. And we lobby our elected officials. Recently, we've done a lot of letter writing campaigns to our various federal representatives. We also do a lot of meeting on the state level and local levels. Last Thursday, I joined Mayor Cranley at a press conference on City Hall where he announced a lawsuit against the state of Ohio against HB 228 and the laws that prevent local municipalities from enacting gun reform. Because the state of Ohio says that that's not something cities or counties are allowed to do, and that it has to be a state or federal level. We disagree with that, and we are endorsing Mayor Cranley's lawsuit against the state of Ohio and the Attorney General and Governor DeWine, demanding that they allow local municipalities to enact gun reform. Because in Cincinnati, at least, our mayor and our city council are extremely important. Mayor Cranley is a champion of gun sense reform, as is Councilmember Sittenfeld and various other members. So we've held meetings at City Hall. We met a few months ago with Councilmember Sittenfeld to see what we can do to support ending gun violence. And we've met with State Representative Richard Kelly, Jessica Miranda, Cecil Thomas, Cedric Denson at the state level. And we're planning a student lobbying day at the State House later this summer, partnering with Students Demand Action to organize that. We'll travel and gather with students from across the state to come to the State House and have a day of lobbying, of meeting with our representatives and our senators, and hopefully meeting with Governor DeWine, because he has been semi-supportive on a few gun reform bills. We are yet to see if he'll actually follow through on that. We did endorse Richard Ordray in the last cycle. So some of our demands, our public policy points: we support raising the age to purchase any firearm to 21 years of age, creating a red flag system. Some people are a little confused about what a red flag law is. Red flag laws allow the family or loved ones of someone who may be deemed at risk of committing an act of gun violence. That allows them to petition the courts to temporarily remove the guns from that person's home, which is extremely important. And in states that do have that, I believe there are 21 states in Washington, D.C. that currently have red flag bills that show dramatic decreases in gun violence levels. We support fixing the gun show loophole, which allows someone to purchase a gun at a gun show without having to go through a background check, which is really ridiculous, doesn't really make any sense. And then, of course, universal background checks, H.R. 8 at the federal level. It's really just kind of the most basic level of gun reform you can get. Of all the various aspects, just making sure you have a background check before you buy a gun is really pretty simple. Banning assault weapons, a little more controversial than some of our other policy points, but we do view assault weapons as being weapons of war, weapons of mass destruction, something that you don't need to own. You're not going to go hunting and kill a deer with an assault weapon. If you do, there's something else wrong. But it's really not something any of us need, and it's
With our
not
new
protected by the
Catholic
Second Amendment.
He loves people to be threatened, killed, I guess.
So we also support longer mental health checks before being able to purchase a gun or certain magazines. We want to tie in mental health to our outlook and research in regard to gun violence and gun reform legislation, because unfortunately a large number of the people that we lose every year and every day to gun violence happen to be suicides with a gun. That's a huge issue. So really looking at that in our schools as well, focusing on that a lot is very important. A federal and state level gun ownership suggestions, a checklist for safety, if you will, similar to Moms Demand Action's their Be Smart program, if you've heard of that, kind of tips and suggestions for how to safely store and use guns when they're in your home, so that you don't have accidental shootings, because we hear a lot about young children especially that will find their parent's gun and then accidentally kill themselves or someone else in the house. I want to ban all bump stocks and high-capacity magazines. Bump stocks have gotten a lot of attention, but high-capacity magazines have not. High-capacity magazines are very large magazines that hold even more bullets than you would normally have in a gun, and allow you, therefore, to shoot way more bullets in a short amount of time than you normally would. We are completely against arming school teachers on school campuses as well as school staff. That's been a really huge issue. I don't understand why anyone would support that. It just doesn't make any sense. We have school resource officers, and we need to do improvements on that, as Broward County and Parkland has shown. But the solution is not to arm our teachers, our educators. We do want to increase school security to prevent these mass shootings at schools like Parkland and Columbine and Sandy Hook. So again, we don't want to arm teachers and staff, but making sure that we have proper security on school grounds in case someone tries to come on the school premises with an AR-15, which we've seen is the weapon of choice in school shootings and mass shootings. So that's a really important one as well. And then we want to provide the CDC with the necessary funding to study gun violence. A lot of people, especially on the other side of the aisle, look at the funding that we show from Giffords or Everytown or Brady and say, oh, well, that's just biased, obviously. So it isn't biased, they just fund the research. But we do want to make sure that the CDC has the proper resources and is legally allowed to fund this research so we can get non-biased third-party research regarding gun violence. And as I've mentioned before, a mental health focus is not just in our schools, but in our community, and something that our legislators need to address when they're coming up with legislation is that mental health focus and how it ties into what we do. So again, just kind of a little reminder, when you're looking at gun policy and gun research, gun violence disproportionately affects minorities in low-income areas, especially racial minorities and members of the LGBT community. As we saw with the shooting scare at DC Pride over the weekend, we released a statement on that last night. If you want to look at that, it's on our social media accounts. But again, these minority communities and lower income areas are often where we see the most amounts of gun violence. It isn't just the mass shootings we see on the headlines. It isn't just Parkland and Columbine, but it's the everyday shooting. It's the 100 people that die every day as a result of gun violence in our cities. So some of our main goals and activities we'll be looking at for the next 6 months. Holding more town halls and forums with candidates like Marlena and Charmaine McGuffey, as well as candidates at the state level. And we're looking to organize an event. We've been in contact with the Andrew Yang campaign and the Elizabeth Warren campaigns about holding an event in Ohio, either Cincinnati or Columbus, which would be a gun violence focused town hall or forum where we could get these candidates to address these issues even more. So far, most of our candidates for 2020, for the presidential election, have been in support. We had Eric Swalwell, who was focused almost entirely on gun violence throughout his campaign. We have not endorsed any presidential candidates yet. We'll be holding out for now on that. But it is important that we look at our candidates' views on gun control, because until recently, until Parkland and the March for Our Lives and the student walkouts, it wasn't an issue that got nearly as much attention as it should, and we cannot and will not allow the NRA to buy another president. So we're also currently working on expanding our state chapters. Our Nebraska chapter launched last week. We have leads in California and Florida where we may be launching new chapters, as well as working to expand in Ohio, some of the more rural communities that don't get as much attention, and there isn't an active gun violence prevention community there. So we're going to be working with Moms Demand Action a bit, because they're also looking to do some expansion into Wilmington and other areas. So we're going to be working with them a lot on that. So as most of you know, March 14th in 2018, a month after the Parkland school shooting, students from March for Our Lives and the Women's March Youth Empower organization organized national gun violence walkouts, which had thousands of students from across the country walking out of school at 10 a.m. demanding that their representatives address gun violence. We have seen some changes. There have been many states in the past year that have enacted gun reform. We have not seen anything big on a federal level besides H.R. 8, which McConnell has still yet to hold a vote on. But in 2019, this year, we organized a second annual March 14th walkout. Nationally, we partnered with March for Our Lives, Students Demand Action, Moms Demand Action, and various indivisible groups to make sure that this wasn't just a local event in Cincinnati, but that these walkouts were nationwide. We also partnered with No Code for Change, a group based in New York and Washington, D.C., and they coordinated a massive rally outside of the White House and on Capitol Hill. And those rallies got a lot of attention. Walkouts were a lot smaller this year, but they were still very meaningful. We got State Senator Cecil Thomas to come out and speak to a couple of schools in Cincinnati on his vision for gun reform. So another campaign we'll be launching is the canvassing campaign. We're going to be going door to door across Ohio, mainly our student members, to discuss our policy points and ending gun violence, and also to fundraise door to door with voters in Ohio. So not only will we be doing canvassing for our endorsed candidates coming up, especially this summer, we'll be launching some canvassing events, but we're also going to be organizing general gun violence focused, oriented canvassing, so printing materials and going door to door and registering voters and making sure that we have, again, a record voter turnout. In Hamilton County in 2018, we had a record voter turnout, and that's how we flipped the county blue and how we flipped Jessica Miranda's state seat.
Yes.
We did endorse Jessica Miranda and supported her throughout her campaign and helped her. She has been an amazing supporter of our organization. She has met with us before, and she is planning some more activities with us in the future. I've talked a bit about what we do to elect gun sense candidates. I'm going to go over a little more about what we do exactly with them. We're planning phone banking against, campaign advising, helping them focus their vision on gun reform to make sure that it really aligns with what we need. And then we also put our members directly into campaigns as campaign staff and interns, and not just volunteers. So I'll be working with Brookfield for Board and Charmaine McGuffey this year to help them get elected. We have our members, we'll be marching in Pride Parade with them and helping with them with their various campaign needs. So in 2018, I'm not going to read through all of these. Just if you're curious, the kind of candidates we endorsed, we don't just endorse at the federal or state level. We also endorse various other offices besides the legislature. We endorsed Kathleen Clyde for Secretary of State, Steve Dettelbach for Attorney General, Pat Bruns for the Board of Education, various other candidates, but most of our candidates were for either the U.S. House or the Ohio House or Senate. So various candidates that we endorsed. And then so far in 2019, we've endorsed 2 candidates. Both of them here in Cincinnati and Hamilton County, one of them present in the room, Arlena, and the other Charmaine McGuffey, which we just recently announced last week. Again, so Arlena is running for Cincinnati School Board.
Marlena.
So we definitely want to make sure that we have gun sense advocates on the school board. We're building up that grassroots bench, so we do have candidates and officials, even at lower levels of government, that support that. And then, as I'm sure many of you know, Jim Neal is a Democrat. Supposedly, yeah. And we don't necessarily restrict ourselves to endorsing Democrats, but all of our endorsements so far in 2018 and 2019, yeah, it just happens that way. It's funny how it turns out like that, but yeah. So the sheriff's office, we're hoping, will be run a lot better, and that will be able to get a lot more support from our county with a true gun sense champion in the sheriff's office. So our current leadership, I'm the president and chief strategist of our organization. We just announced our new outreach and communications directors. If you'd like to chat with any of us or meet any of our members, just send us an email and whatnot, and we will be happy to meet with you and discuss gun reform with you. Here's our contact info. Our business cards are set out in the back. But does anyone have any questions about gun violence, gun violence statistics, or our organization and our partnerships? Yeah. No.
Yeah, you mentioned 2 quick statistics, and then I have a question. You mentioned a weapon of choice in school mass shootings. What was that? I didn't catch it.
The AR-15. Assault weapons, and specifically the AR-15.
The AR-15, okay.
Yeah, those are the weapons of choice.
Okay, in assault. Do you have any statistics on weapons of choice for suicides?
Those, I don't have a statistic exactly, but those tend to be handguns, smaller weapons that people can get easier access to and use easier in those instances.
Handguns in general, okay. And
Yeah.
then you mentioned reaching out to younger voters, trying to get them registered. I did a great deal of voter registration in 2016. I found it difficult to find access to younger voters, to places, et cetera. So I'm interested in how you're going about that and whether you need other people to help do that.
Yeah, so we'll definitely be looking for volunteers. March for Our Lives just launched a new Cincinnati chapter, and I'm also involved with them. That they are going to be partnering with us a lot when it comes to voter registration, because that's one of their key focuses. But a lot of what we do, there's a Students Demand Action chapter at UC and Walnut Hills that we work a lot with. So going to schools and campuses, or just walking around UC with the clipboard, registering young people. We'll be going. We're planning to, once the school year starts in September and August, going to schools and specifically reaching out to government classes and seeing if we can visit with them, register voters, and talk about the issues with them. So we're going to be working with the Hamilton County Juvenile Magistrates. One of our members, his mom is the Chief Juvenile Magistrate in Hamilton County. And we'll be doing a lot of work with them because they do a lot of school outreach, and we'll be joining them with that. So going to where the students are tends to be by finding the easiest way to access them.
And by schools, do you mean exclusively universities and colleges, or are you also speaking about high schools?
Oh, high schools as well, yeah. March for Our Lives had a campaign last year, the Walk Out to Vote. It was a 4-week campaign where they mainly on, I think it was on Monday nights, Mondays, they organized walkout to votes and various events. They had a day where they would have encourage people to write like chalk reminders on sidewalk, like, hey, vote November 8th or November 4th or whatever. And then they did like an art out the vote or whatever, where they had student artists come up with poster designs to encourage young people to vote. And then on election day, they organized a walkout to vote, where organized by March for Our Lives and the Future Coalition. which was essentially a day where in high schools and colleges across the country, at 10 a.m., students would walk out of class together to go vote at their polling location. And that happened across the country, and that was a really great way to get young people engaged and to have people encouraging each other. And we're working to continue campaigns like that to get young people involved.
Yeah, I have a question. A few years ago, I volunteered at the Veterans Hospital down on Vine Street in the mental health section. And one of the men who worked there, in the Hunter magazine, in the back page, he sent $25 and got a license to legally purchase and sell firearms. For $25, they would mail him a machine gun, a bazooka, anything he wanted. And eventually, he was starting to order guns for some of the patients and have them mailed to their house. Is there anything you know of that is stopping this easy way to get a hold of serious weapons?
I can't imagine why that would be legal, but it's Ohio, so I'm really not surprised.
But it goes through the mail.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I just want to mention that if you're going to go into schools, that you should not go in as an organization for guns, for patrol. You need to go in as a League of Women Voters.
Yes.
You need to go in as a I don't care what you talk about, but when you're there, when you're presenting yourself at the office, you need to have a League of Women Voters presentation, because they're non-affiliated, non-political, and you need to have that. You didn't have that excuse. I mean, I hate to say that you go in as a little black sheep, but I think that's what needs to happen here. You need to go in and get into the schools, and you need to do that as a non-affiliated person.
Yeah, Leave Women Voters are another amazing organization.
Ethan, I want to thank you and the young people here. You've made my day. It's so depressing, but to see you young people doing this stuff is just awesome. I have two things. I wonder more about you as personally, like what school you go to, how you got started in this, what your plans are. And is there a way for us to intervene with people that are showing these signs of being dangerous and crazy? I mean, family members or whatever. I just wondered about that.
So Ohio currently does not have a red flag law system in place, to address your second question. But if you have obvious signs of that, you can reach out to the Cincinnati Police Department or the Hampton County Sheriff's Office. I'm not entirely sure which of those groups would be best to reach out to, but if you find something like that, definitely reach out to someone like that. So yeah, I'm 16. I'll be a junior this year in high school. I'm actually homeschooled, which gives me a lot more time to get involved in stuff like this. So again, Students for Gun legislation nationally launched in Michigan the day after the Parkland shooting, with their initial Change.org petition reaching 300,000 signatures to their representatives. And I met them at a peace conference in Michigan that I went to with a group, and that was in March or April of 2018. And they gave a presentation there on their organization and gun violence prevention. And I got to interact with some of them, some of their founders, and that's how I got involved. I'd attended the March for Our Lives in Cincinnati, organized by the Young Activists Coalition and Moms Demand Action. That was awesome, and I was super engaged with that. And then I helped organize a walkout. So I take classes at an educational program in Deer Park, and we organized a student walkout there on March 14th of 2018. And after that, I really got involved founding the Ohio chapter, expanded it in more areas across Ohio. I volunteered with Moms Demand Action. And then I got involved in the midterm elections. I was an intern for the Ohio Democratic Party. And I did a lot of work with the Pureval and Schiller campaigns mainly. But through that I got to meet Kathleen Clyde and AFTAB. And there are a lot of really awesome things I got to do with them. I think I worked 120 hours in a month and a half this intern in the midterms. But it was really fun work. I got to meet a lot of great people and get involved and make a difference in our state and county elections that year. And then I joined the Cincinnati Indivisible chapter, and I'm their media director right now. So I'm involved with them off and on. The chapter was founded after 2016, that horrible night when we woke up and found that Donald Trump was our president. And they founded that. They've done various healthcare rallies, gun violence rallies, all sorts of issues. And they're really involved. They're planning to organize a lot to knock out Rob Portman from the U.S. Senate. I'm sure we're all very energized. The Strickland campaign, was a bit of a bummer that didn't get more energy in 2016, but we're really hopeful that whoever runs against Rob Portman gets a lot more traction. And I'm involved with the Ohio Climate Strike Initiative. I don't know if any of you followed that, but starting back in March of this year, organized, inspired by Greta Thunberg in Germany. She started organizing students. She would leave class and she'd sit outside of her school with a sign protesting climate change. And eventually, she's been doing this since March. The way schools work in Europe, apparently, there's not like a one long summer break. So she's been doing this every Friday. She skips school every Friday since March. She's spoken to the EU, the British Parliament, various business conferences, and then that inspired into the US, where on March 14th or March 15th of this year, students would strike from school for the day and go join a rally or protest against climate change, and they wear green armbands in support of climate change. So I'm also involved with them. I'm the Ohio Communications Lead for them. And I'm the organizer of the Cincinnati chapter. We've held 2 strikes in Cincinnati downtown at Washington Park and Fountain Square. And we're planning at least 2 more strikes this summer. And I can send you all information on that at the time if you're interested. Yeah, definitely.
What are we doing 20 years from now?
Oh, I'm looking into law school, potentially.
All right.
Yeah. I'd like to do work with the ACLU, with the Southern Property Law Center.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
So how many businesses in total are still giving NRA discounts? And can you name a few? Not the whole list, because you said it was a big list.
If I remember correctly, there were 81 businesses or so across Ohio that still give discounts. None of them are major corporations right now, I think. But there's a lot of auto shops and maintenance companies that give discounts, and then there's some transportation, like I can't remember what bus company it was, but there was somewhere in mid-Ohio or so, there's a bus company that was giving past discounts to NRA members and various other companies. I can send you all the list as well if you're interested.
Yes, please.
Yeah, there's a very large list in Ohio. Most of them are smaller companies and businesses across Ohio, but yeah.
Back here.
Okay, I don't know if you've read this book, and I'd recommend it to everybody. It's called Dying of Whiteness, and I can't remember the name of the, have you read it?
Yes.
Okay, and they use Missouri as an example of a state that's just gone totally wacko on gun laws. I mean, they're even worse than we are.
And abortion.
Well, right. And they already have the law that says you can carry a concealed weapon with no training whatsoever, and not even, I don't think, with a background check, which is just insane and crazy. But one of the things they emphasize, and by the way, they say a lot of these white men voted for Trump and voted for all these Republicans, and then they gave statistics about what happened in the state of Missouri after they passed all these laws that made it easier and easier to obtain guns and have more and more powerful guns. And of course, the statistics show that their death rates by gun went up unbelievably high. But what they say is like, so much of it is suicides. And men tend to use guns more than women to commit suicide, and as you probably can imagine, they're a lot more successful than other attempts at suicide. And so it's probably like at least 2 to 3 suicides for every murder or homicide. Although I guess suicides are considered homicides, I'm not sure because you use that term homicides. But I mean, so many of these people are just voting against their own interests. And I just wonder what we can possibly do to educate people. I mean, you're doing it right now, but you're speaking to the choir. I just wish there was some way that we could educate these people that they're voting against their own interests.
Yeah, so I'm not entirely sure with Missouri specific laws, but I do know they have some very right-wing extremist laws regarding guns, gun control, or lack thereof. But I think a lot of what's really important, and I've struggled with this a lot because I do campaign work, is how do you reach those people who are, just seem like they're so far over to the right, especially on issues like gun control, which is what Ohio Students for Gun legislation focuses on. But you know, how do you reach them? How do you explain it to them? How do you get them to understand? And it's a really hard question, but I think just getting the statistics out there. You know, you are 25 times more likely to die by a gun in the U.S. than in any other high developed nation on earth. 25 more times. 100 to 107 Americans die on average every day in the U.S. Every day. Roughly 40,000 Americans die a year as a result of gun violence. It's the statistics I think people often overlook, and I think it's really important to get those statistics out there. And I would like to point out that, again, when I was introduced, the 2 men with assault weapons that were orange on Saturday were mentioned. Those were straight white men. Straight white men. Yeah.
Ethan,
Yeah.
I have got a question. You were talking about going into the schools and getting people registered. I was wondering if you have gone to like football games, basketball games, stuff like that, where people are congregated, that's possibly that age, and also maybe Boy Scout troops.
Yeah, so Boy Scout troops are interesting. I'm a Boy Scout myself, and my troop is very conservative. Very conservative. Maybe Kentucky, Northern Kentucky, but it's interesting to get into the Boy Scout troops. I think it's a little harder with that just because they are a private organization and reaching, especially since they're mainly conservative, at least they tend to be. I think it's a little more harder to reach those.
May work against us. Okay, then the other thing I was curious about, this is something that's bothering me, and my son keeps going, "Oh, Mom, I'm sure it's illegal." But do you have any fear that Trump, as wonderful as he is, doesn't get his rough, tough gang type members, standing at the polls with these guns?
Oh, I would not be surprised at all. A friend of mine who is a student liaison from Demand Action in Ohio, Marguerite, she said when she was working the polls in 2018, a lot of people would come up and they would give her their NRA membership cards or their gun permits or whatnot as their means of identifying themselves when they went to the polls. And she was just flabbergasted at this. And I would absolutely not be surprised if someone were standing beyond that, 100-foot distance, just walking around with an assault weapon, in their cowboy hats and boots, parading around with their assault weapons.
But there is 100-foot.
For campaigns, it's 100 feet from the polling location where you can stand to campaign for a specific candidate, but they could, I'm sure, carry their guns into the polling locations as well, if they wanted to do that as well, unfortunately. But hopefully if we can continue the trend that Jessica wanted to set, we can flip more of those state houses, state seats blue, and we can get Governor DeWine eventually.
I have heard that, do you know if this is true, this statistic that there are more children under 4 killed by gun violence a year than police officers?
To my knowledge, that statistic is true. I don't have a verified number on that with me. I can definitely check into that, but to my knowledge, that is accurate.
Yeah, I think your emphasis on mental training is extremely important. I mean, why are men so obsessed with this? I mean, the message needs to get out that a gun is no cure for erectile dysfunction.
Yeah, that's masculinity right there. It's a toxic culture. Gun culture needs to change for sure.
I have also.
You go ahead.
I used to be a teacher, and I know that one thing that was really effective in the high school that I worked that got through a lot of kids was that the 12th grade government teacher had voter registration forms, and every student, when they turned 18, they received extra credit in government when they registered to vote. And she had like 90 to 100% students signing up, and so it was a really effective way to do it. Probably the only difficult part would be arranging a pickup to make sure that the forms got to where they needed to be, but it really was effective for getting kids with the least amount of effort for outside people.
That's really awesome. That sounds like an amazing way to reach young voters, especially in the school, without having to present yourself as a legal voters person to get in. So I know Chris Seelbach, Councilmember Seelbach, has done some various visits. I think he went to CPS a few months ago, or SNPS, sorry, to speak with government classes, encourage civic engagement, things like that. So I think it's important that we also get our local elected officials on board with that, so that we can get more involvement at the schools from our local elected officials.
I heard that there is movement on the restriction that the CDC cannot use federal money to study gun violence. Could you just talk about that a little more?
Yeah, so the House of Representatives passed a bill 2 or 3 weeks ago now to give $50 to $100 million to the CDC to study gun violence in the next fiscal year. Again, Majority Leader McConnell has rejected to hear any vote or sign that to a committee yet. So hopefully we'll get some movement from our fellow Republicans on that in the Senate, that there is a bill that passed the House recently regarding that. But until we can get to the Senate, at least consider these bills, there's not a lot we can do.
Right here.
Yeah.
I have heard that.
Closer.
I've heard that the NRA is going bankrupt. Do you know anything about that?
So yeah, the NRA has had a lot of infighting, and they are having some financial problems. Luckily, yeah.
And IRS problems.
Yes, IRS problems as well. And there's a controversy between their CEO and their president. You probably know of Oliver North, a lovely little straight white guy who owns a gun. Again. So yeah, exactly. So they are having problems with that, and they are having a lot of financial problems with which I offer them my thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. So we're about to wrap up, but I have one suggestion, and that is if the mayor is on your side, let's have a mayoral resolution making March 14th Gun Sense Day in Cincinnati. And let's do that in cities all over Ohio. And with the hope that maybe it might even become a national holiday or something.
So Mayor Cranley has proclaimed that day before. It's actually June 7th is National Gun Violence Awareness Day.
Okay.
And Mayor Cranley and Mayor Holt and various other local mayors proclaimed that day as part of the Wear Orange Weekend, and that's happened across the country. There were something like 750 plus Wear Orange events this past weekend across the country. And if you were downtown, last weekend you have seen Carew Tower, the Duke Energy Convention Center, Fountain Square, the Fifth Third Building, various local landmarks all lit up orange to celebrate gun violence.
So you can strengthen that by making it not just mayoral, but making it a council resolution?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We'll definitely reach out to Councilmember Sittenfeld and various other council members on that.
I think we're there. You are wonderful. Can you imagine this guy? Can you imagine this guy when he actually graduates high school? That was really wonderful. Thank you. You've done a really good job, and amazing. A lot of information and more information that we're certainly getting from our own government about what's happening here. This is.
If you are interested, I do have orange gun violence awareness ribbons and Rainbow Orlando Pulse shooting remembrance ribbons, and that anniversary is tomorrow, June 12th, is the anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting. And I have remembrance ribbons for that, as well as orange gun violence awareness ribbons. If you're interested in one, they'll be up here.
And ribbons. Thank you so much for coming today. Let me just remind you that next week we have the Freedom Center coming. It's Ryan Wynette, and I'll bet he's still in high school. You're right. It says Freedom Center. National Underground Railroad. There you go. Thank you so much for coming. You are a wonderful, wonderful audience. Thank you for being here.